All right, everybody, welcome to episode 9 of the Talking Lead podcast, where we'll be discussing, well, nines. How's it going, Left Hand?
9 meals, baby. Yeah, going good. How about you, bud?
Doing well.
Did you have a good week?
I did have a good week. Had a very good week. Got my first Glock Saturday.
Very first?
Yeah, very first.
Welcome to the
Glock.
club.
If you don't count the 17 that I bought my wife.
Well, that kind of counts. I mean, possession, what is it, being married, it's 50-50, right?
Yeah, so is it half mine? Even though it's color filled purple.
You get the lower half. Do you have it here? Where's it at?
Yeah, it's the one in the middle.
This one?
Yeah.
So what kind of color job you do?
That's good, though, because the lower half is the one that's actually considered a gun by the ATF. We are filming this episode, so if you're listening right now, this will probably be on YouTube like 5 months later, because I got a feeling that's how long it's going to take me to edit it and put it into the... How many different parts are they allowed to have? I think it's 15 minutes when you first start.
Well, I guess you put her name on it, so I guess technically it's not yours now.
Yeah, Mrs. Blank. We won't mention my last name, but I just wanted her, like I said in that previous episode.
Mrs. Zeke is what it says.
Yeah, it says Mrs. Zeke because, I wanted to make sure that she knew it was her gift.
So you cut yourself in the throat right there, buddy. You don't get any of that.
I know, but she loves
it's
it.
hers.
But I got my 19 now, so that's what matters. We got some very special guests here in the studio with us. Speaking of studio, this is our first recording in the new Talking Lead headquarters.
Yes, we are. The high rise. Talking Lead high rise.
That's right, our big sky tower in Nashville. We got some very special guests with us tonight. We have got Bruce. He is with a local police force, SWAT team leader, correct?
Correct.
How long have you been doing that?
Been a police officer just under 18 years, and Texas. Everybody forgive me. I'm not trying to do a Vin Diesel night. I've got a head cold I'm fighting, so.
Everybody's going to think it's sexy, though.
Oh, yeah.
We actually do have Vin Diesel in house tonight, so. Welcome in, Vin.
Why was he strapped up in leather downstairs to a chair?
You.
Oh, okay.
You're Vin Diesel.
Well, no, I've
our ratings up. Go along with it.
Doing my best. 18 years in law enforcement, and I guess about 15 years attached to a SWAT team.
Nice. Bruce is going to be one of our guest judges when we have the AR-15 beauty contest. It's going to be a good time there.
I've got my Speedo ready.
Not contestant.
Okay.
Guest judge. Our other special guest we have from YouTube notoriety is 10 Outdoors 9. How's it going?
Going pretty well. Thanks for having me tonight.
We figured 9mm. You got 9 in your name. Why not?
Yeah.
And you know a lot about 9mm.
I don't know as much as you think I do.
Well, surprise us.
We're supposed to look like we got intelligent guests.
It's the caliber that I cut my teeth on. So
tonight you're the expert.
Your ratings are going to go down because of that. So
we'll hold you directly responsible.
I appreciate that.
Outside of getting my first Glock 19 this week, we launched our first letter campaign. We'll talk about that a little bit later. It's actually going to be part of my Facts to Fight the Myth. But if you go to YouTube, we actually have our first YouTube video up. We cut our teeth on that.
We did a lot of firsts this week, didn't we?
We did do a lot of firsts this week. First Glock 19, first YouTube video.
First letter campaign.
2 hours of filming to get a 7-minute video. Wow.
Your first Glock 19, that's about the worst possible gun you could have bought.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, this is not my first gun. It's first Glock 19.
But
it's his first Glock.
Your first Glock. That's the worst possible Glock you could have bought.
And
we're just going to talk about because you'll buy more of them.
Oh, gotcha.
I had 6 of them a few years ago.
6?
Yeah. I'm down to 3.
Yeah.
It is an addictive gun.
Yes, it is.
I like
so
it.
It's,
when I shot it, it was like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
No, seriously, it's a great choice for target and for carry as well. So, just so you know, it's worse that you're going to spend more money on it. What's that?
Every man should have one of each of the Glock.
One of each?
Yeah.
I don't have one of each. No, I do know someone who does. I believe
I'm
he
getting
has
there.
all of them. Are you? That's good.
Close.
Yeah.
I know somebody who doesn't and swears he never will, and he'd like to have one of every H&K.
Is he in this room?
No, he's not in this room.
Okay.
But he will be mentioned later. You know who you are, Blinkster.
Yeah, that's right. He is an H&K fan.
Yeah.
He waves the flag, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
H&K.
Left Hand, what'd you do this week as far as guns go?
Let me think. We're at the end of the week. So, yeah, this past weekend I went out and did a little scenario training, my brother-in-law, with this new thing that we're trying to start up. Using the airsoft pistols. Ran through some different type scenarios that we're going to be looking into. And again, that's still kind of in the works, and I'll talk more about that at a later date. Took the Troy 5.56 out, carbine, shot it. Solid gun for those who haven't seen any reviews on it yet. I'll do a more in-depth detail that as I shoot it some more. I've only put about 100 rounds through it, so I hadn't shot it a whole bunch yet. That's the one that the unmentionable store was selling exclusive.
Oh, they're going to get mentioned tonight.
Yeah. So
more to come.
But it's a very sweet gun. Troy is excellent company, and their products are excellent, and I hope they get into more of the carbines. So I'm looking forward to them developing more of those. Shot the sub 2000, the 40 cal. Took it out also. Did a little run through it. Well, no, that's the one I've been shooting. I haven't shot the 9 yet. I haven't got it back yet. I've got it at the armory. They've got it threading the barrel for me.
Gotcha.
So I'm supposed to be getting that back tomorrow. Hopefully I can do a review on that. What else did I do this week? Obviously, after I shot, I did some cleaning. So spent some time getting to know those guns a little bit better inside and out. And I tell you what, if you guys have never broken down a sub 2000, Kel-Tec sub 2000, it's a pain in the butt. I mean, normally, like you take a Glock. How long does it take you to clean a Glock?
Couple minutes.
Yeah. What about an AR? How long does it take you? Maybe.
I try to take my time with that. I can do it in 10 to 15.
Yeah, like
which
10 to 15 minutes.
Is slow for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I like to take my time with that.
45 minutes, I'd say.
Yeah.
On the sub 2K, just getting it broke down and then cleaning it and then putting it back together. So another 25 minutes or so.
So it's the kind of gun you pack a lunch when you're going to clean it.
Yeah, exactly. That's one you definitely want to look at the manual before you get in there if you've never broken it down before. It's a little different, a little tricky. So, yeah, so that's what I did this week.
Very cool. 10 Outdoors. What'd you do with guns this week? I'm sure a lot.
No, not really. I may have to break this down by caliber. 40. I bought a Glock 23 Gen 4 about a month ago, and I really haven't done that much with it. It's my first Gen 4. And did a lot of full metal jacket plate shooting, speed drills with that. Not trying to do quick mag, just trying to be on target. Did that, then I dropped in my Glock 32 barrel for 357 SIG, and that works very well in the Gen 4 Glocks. So there's no problem with the Gen 3 barrels going to Gen 4
Going
Glocks.
to Gen 4?
What's
cool.
that?
I said there's no problem with that conversion. Then.
No,
That's
not
cool.
at all. I mean, in fact, if you order an aftermarket barrel from someone for your Gen 4, there's no specification as to which generation Glock it came from. They're all the same. So that works well. The Gen 3 is working well. Put about 200 rounds through that, another 100 rounds of 357 SIG full metal jacket. I'm trying to remember what else I've done. Did a little bit of crow hunting over the weekend in the backyard. Very informal, as in looking out the window, seeing crows, and taking the Mossberg and letting them have it.
A little pest control.
Yeah, you could call it that. So some things along that line, and I know there's some other things, but Monday put up a video of the XDS 45 ACP 3.3. In fact, I got that out last weekend. That's something else I bought last month, and it just really had time to put it to work. So, where can you find 45 full metal jackets? So I actually found some out of state in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and brought it down and did some things there. So I guess 3 calibers this week, and I know there's something else. It's just not coming to mind right now. Plus my crow hunting with the 12 gauge.
I just happened to be in Walmart yesterday at about 5 o'clock, and they got a truck in, and they were unloading the ammo, and I got some 9mm. They limited you to like 3 boxes.
I was wondering about
per person per day.
I think that really varies. I think Academy Sports, for example, here in Nashville, they limit you to 1 box per caliber, and that would be either full metal jacket or some hollow points. If I'm not mistaken, Bass Pro here in Nashville, it was 10 boxes.
Really?
I think so. That was about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
They must be getting a little more volume in than other places.
Well, there's some stores. I was in Georgia last week on business, and I try to get in some of the stores, and you see ammo in some places and some are not. But there's actually more ammo south of Tennessee there is in Tennessee, for what I'm seeing. So hopefully people get out and do some more shooting.
If they can find the ammo.
Right.
And Bruce, did you do anything with guns this week? I mean, you're a police officer, so I'm sure you at least touched it every day.
But, we did a felony stop one night and then served a search warrant, narcotics arrest warrant earlier this week. Fortunately, we never had to pull a trigger or anything, but hope we never have to. But we, other than that, I haven't done any shooting this week.
I think he officially wins the award for coolest weekend gun.
Yeah, that is me.
Did you do anything voluntary with guns?
Not a gun. I did shoot a bow with my daughter this week a little bit. We got her a nice little bow for Christmas. She's really gotten involved in
How old is she?
She's 8.
8 years old?
Yeah,
She's shooting
loves
bow,
it.
huh?
Nice. Well, it all came from that movie Brave. She saw it. Thought it was the coolest little thing in the world. So I know there's a lot of little girls getting bows this year at Christmas. So.
She pretty accurate with it? She good?
She's getting better. The hard thing is it's a little compound bow, and I've got it restricted as low as the pull tension can be, but it's still a little strong for her. So she's getting better.
She does it. Those muscles will.
She's strong already, but just not quite enough to get that shoulder for the pull on it. But she hey, we have a good time with it. And she understands the safety factors involved too.
And speaking of your family, we do have to give your wonderful wife, Ace, codename Ace,
Ace,
a shout out.
She is the definitely better part of this half union.
She let us rent you for the night. So wait, that just sounds weird. She let you come and do the
said
show
that, I
tonight.
did not.
Oh, speaking of code names for our significant others, Pepper, that was on our show,
Right.
my significant other. We talked about the Valentine's gift. I got her Valentine's. It came in, her Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 380.
Nice. She shot it yet?
Not yet.
No?
I can't find any ammo. I can't find any 380
So
ammo.
you bought her a nice, really expensive hammer.
Yeah, well, it's art right now.
I may sell you some.
Oh, you got some?
Yeah.
There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, good deal. Appreciate that.
I wanted to ask you about this, Bruce, because it's law enforcement related. I wanted to know if you had seen any of the targets that are real controversial that have come out that have been sold here lately. Have you heard of the Never Hesitate targets that have been out here
No,
recently?
I have not.
I don't know if you guys have seen them or heard about them.
I have. Yeah.
There are targets that have come out that they're selling. Department of Homeland Security has bought a bunch of them, and that's what set this whole thing off. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories to that we won't touch on, but just the targets themselves are kind of disturbing. And understand that, yeah, there needs to be times where, I mean, not needs to be, but there may be times where these target situations may happen. But the targets are
Well, let's
of
face it,
children.
they will happen. They have happened in the past.
But the targets are like of little kids with guns pointing them at you, pregnant women, mothers with their kids at a playground, teenagers,
Older citizens, senior
older
citizens.
with shotguns, stuff like that. And I was just wanting to get a law enforcement perspective on those targets. Is it something that, I mean, I understand the theory behind them, but is it something that you feel really needs to be put out there, or?
Absolutely. I know I'm probably going to get a few people upset with me, but unfortunately, it's you do. And the reason being is we had probably the most accurate shooters during World War II. We had probably the best campaigns. These men had been trained very well on how to handle M1 Garand, whatever other weapon systems they were using. But what we started seeing, let me get a lot of information comes. I don't know if any of y'all ever heard of Colonel Dave Grossman. He's written a book called On Killing and On Combat. It is something that it's basically the Bible of law enforcement. If you want to take law enforcement seriously and the depths of what it takes to actually be involved in possibly taking a life and the psychological effects it has on the people involved. Well, the study showed that, and forgive me, I'm not a master of the topic, but World War II had great accuracy. But however, a lot of people were not actually aiming at the target because what they were in a combat battlefield, and under sympathetic nervous system, your stress is up, your heart rate's kicking up to a high rate. You get things like tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, and when they're ready to make the fire, it's not a round circled target that's coming after them to kill them. It's actually a real human being, and they had not really trained themselves psychologically. It's a whole different world when you're sitting on a firing range and you're shooting down range and you're hitting a specific target that's not moving and trying to kill you. So Vietnam, we learned a lot better. We started using, actually the silhouette started coming into play, which looked more human, helped in the bad part that happened during Vietnam. We also came in with a fully automatic M16, so there was a lot of just spraying into a general area. Most of law enforcement, you'll come across most that do reality-based training. I know you talked about using the airsoft earlier, and of course we got simunitions that we try to use. We on our team and most SWAT teams and most law enforcement agencies have moved over to actually using real human-faced targets, because it's not a circular silhouette that's coming after you. It is actually, and sadly, we have to say we've got men and women over, fighting for this country right now overseas that are being killed by children and being killed by, it's unfortunately it's a fact when it comes to radical Islam, however you want to politically definition you want to put on it. They are using women, they are using children, and so if you have not gotten your mind prepared that it could be a pregnant woman, it could be the 67-year-old lady that looks innocent as could be. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm bringing it from a law enforcement perspective because we have to prepare ourselves that it could be anybody with a gun is potentially able to kill us.
Absolutely. I agree with that. It's something in the training that, I mean, like you said, it is a sad fact, but if you're not prepared to do that, that split second of hesitation, which these targets are called no hesitation targets.
Well, that's the thing. If they can't bring themselves to shoot the targets, then they're not going to be able, in a real world scenario, be able to. Their lives are on the line, and that's what they're there for. Is to come out of there alive through an imminent threat. And if the imminent threat happens to be a pregnant lady, which I'm sure that happens day in and day out, unfortunately. But if they can't shoot the target, the paper target, they're not going to be able to. Seriously, man.
So we touched on those.
What's your opinion on those targets?
I haven't seen them. I haven't heard of them. But I think I'll agree with you that I think it's really a necessary step. If the feedback from the field is that we hesitated, if a SWAT member hesitated because of that psychological, as much training as they had, even if they had military background, which I know a lot of guys do, and even with that, they could have had military training, but they had never really had to fire a shot at someone based on what position they had. This could have been a support group or something else. I understand that. I think it's a necessary step. I mean, it really can't go any further than that, obviously, but it takes some time to see, after you get into some scenarios, someone who had exposure and training with those types of targets when you get the feedback after the incident, are you seeing an improvement in hesitation, or are you seeing less hesitation? And as far as the person who had to take the shot, what is their psyche? What is their mindset? Are you seeing healthier people? It's kind of weird to say that, but are your SWAT team guys coming out with, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, how do you define that experience without actually being there and planning for it?
One of the arguments against it is that it desensitizes the law enforcement or military individual, the civilian population, I guess, is what one of the arguments is against using those type targets. I disagree with that.
It prepares them for that scenario. A lot of the people that are coming out saying it's a big conspiracy theory, saying law enforcement and military are going to be prepared to take on pregnant women and children and take them all out because this is the end of the world and the beginning of a police state. I mean, we've got a law enforcement officer here. I got a pretty strong feeling that if somebody ordered him to walk into my house when I haven't done anything and take out me and my kids and my wife, he's not going to do that. And that's kind of where a lot of the conspiracy theories are going with it. This is more of exactly like you said. It's preparation for those types of scenarios to where if it does happen, Lord willing, it never does happen, but if it does, you're prepared for it.
Well, this isn't something new. Unfortunately, because of the events that happened recently at Sandy Hook, this has been the hot topic across the nation right now. Everybody has their own opinion on how we can solve this problem.
Right.
I'm not going to try to get into the whole political arguments of it, but like I said, I've been doing this for 18 years. I can remember my first 2 or 3 years of doing this. We were shooting at, actual images of people now, and it's shot discrimination. It's like you said, we're not going to walk into Zeke's home and start opening fire on an innocent family.
Right.
There's a lot of discipline that goes into play with it. Some of these targets you can change the hands on them. You can have where the same target may have someone holding a badge or a beer can, or you have the woman who's holding in her right hand, she's got the baby, and one time she might be holding a gun in the picture, another time she's holding a bottle to feed her baby. Mm-hmm. What is training law enforcement to do is not just look at, they come into a room or it's on a traffic stop, they're just looking at they're looking for the entire image. Mm-hmm. Okay, is there a weapon? Is there a threat to my safety or someone else's safety? And so you won't go through series where they're shooting all children targets with guns or all elderly women with guns. It changes, so you have to recognize the entire target before you respond to it.
So the fact of the matter is these targets aren't something new.
No,
they have been around for years and years.
Now,
probably decades.
As far as real human images and targets,
right.
Yes. Now, so I have not seen the children or the older. Now, we've had elderly people in those shots and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think the children is what's so disturbing for everybody. And again, I haven't seen these targets, but because the murderer at Sandy Hook, I'll never mention his name. His name does not deserve to be mentioned.
Yep. Amen.
He chose to take out the most innocent creatures, and that's what affects us as Americans and humans. You harm our children, that really cuts to the core of what we're built upon. And I think, I'm not always going to agree with what Homeland Security does, but I do not have a problem as long as they have the discipline and the training, and training is conducted properly. Because sad fact of the matter, you had 2 children at Columbine. You had at Pearl, Mississippi. It was a child there. So we have to train ourselves that children, unfortunately, can be trained to kill just as much as as an adult can be.
This is kind of the last political statement we'll make tonight, but reassure our listeners that may be scared. If somebody came to your police department, and I don't know if y'all talked about it, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, and said, okay, we're going to go door to door and confiscate all the guns. Do you honestly think that anybody in our military, our police, is going to go to their possible neighbors and grandma and uncle and take their guns away?
No, when they came across with this whole confiscation of weapons, and I do know several officers, and I've had the same opinion that I joined up to uphold the Constitution of the United States. I'm not going to take your rights away from me. You know, I don't want us to live in a police state where myself and other law enforcement officers are the only ones carrying weapons. We saw the results of that, you know, during the Germans with Hitler, Nazi Germany. No, do not worry. Surprisingly enough, the vast majority of law enforcement officers share the same opinions of legal law-abiding gun owners, that we're very supportive of the Second Amendment. And unfortunately, we're going to be placed in the position because everybody's anti-government right now, because the government has been somewhat egregious on how it's been kind of attacking our basic liberties. Just because the people in Washington are making some decisions we don't agree with, it doesn't mean that every law enforcement officer is going to agree with them and carry out those decisions. Now, are you going to have that one that is drinking the Kool-Aid and believes completely what they say? Of course, but you're going to have that in any line of work you go to. It's a difficult line to walk, because like you said, we have the authority of whatever agency we're working for, and they may have laws we disagree with, but as far as officers, that they will, if a law such as that came down of doing confiscation of weapons, there would be massive, I guess, resistance as far as law enforcement officers to actually go.
Well, I think the military too.
Yes, I mean it's going to be very difficult for them to get the ones who are really wanting to push and take the weapons away from the citizens. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that. We are a nation that truly does believe in our Second Amendment rights, and it's going to be hard to give that up.
And not just our Second Amendment, but the whole Constitution.
The whole Constitution.
They all are intertwined, interact with one another.
And speaking of the people that want to take that away, we'll go into the jack wagon train. Last week,
the jack wagon train?
We launched the jack wagon train. We announce a jack wagoneer every week. And last week, we announced the jack wagoneer extraordinaire, Dianne Feinstein.
She's one of those that doesn't deserve to say her name either. So yeah. I don't care if we say her name again.
Well, if we call her the jack wagoneer extraordinaire, then say her name. Well, this week, we have the jack wagoneer of the week. It's a whole organization of Dick's Sporting Goods. We swore we'd never say their name on the show again, but we're going to go ahead and say it tonight.
So I'm not current with Dick's Sporting Goods. What happened this week?
Well, it's not necessarily this week. It's just their whole stance that they've taken on the Sandy Hook incident is when that happened, they pulled their 5.56, their AR style weapons and whatnot. So
right. Okay. Yeah.
They didn't have handguns anyway, but they had pulled anything with any semblance other than their airsoft guns. So I don't know why they didn't do that too. If they were going to pull their scary looking guns off their shelves, they might as well pull their airsoft. What's the point if you're going to make a stance? Go all the way. So yeah. They're jack wagoneers. They're Dick's Sporting Goods.
Dick's Sporting Goods.
Okay, so I was aware of that. I didn't know if something else had happened.
No, nothing since then. I mean, but that's enough. Do they need to do anything else?
I understand. So what you're saying is anything that they term as a military-style weapon, they've stopped selling the actual weapon, but they're still selling the airsoft weapons, which accurately
exactly
replica-sized, weight, feel, look just like the weapon, other than the orange tip, which can be painted over, is what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense, then.
Yeah.
Total logic.
And I think they're 22s. They still sold those.
The AR style ones?
Yeah. I think they did that, too. Or that might have been Academy that did that. Academy had pulled the ARs.
They're selling them again, though.
But are they selling them again?
Yeah.
So they didn't pull them, or did they pull them?
They may have just sold out. I don't think they ever announced.
Because I thought Walmart had pulled theirs in stock, but they haven't. Walmart still sells them too. So they're just hard to get. There's people waiting there at 7 o'clock in the morning when the truck comes in to get them.
Well, it got to the point where you couldn't get anybody to wait on you back there in the lodge area.
Yeah.
So whatever, it's no loss for me.
At Dick's.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you can never
still
find
can't.
anybody to help
You
you.
still can't. It's ridiculous.
No,
they got
ammo's
nothing to do.
The ammo's
There's
on the
nothing
other
to-
side of the counter, but I can go to Academy or somewhere else and get the ammo right there on the shelf. So, they got differing corporate policies. Of course,
Yeah.
Walmart locks theirs up, but it's interesting to see that. That's a whole other discussion. So,
Yeah. Well, I've noticed between the Walmart and the Academy and the not Dick's. Dick's. As far as the ammo goes, Dick's doesn't seem to be getting anything in at all. Walmart gets a somewhat consistent but small amount in. Academy seems to have a pretty good stock of different calibers. Now, again, the 9mm and the 45s and the 40s and the 22s are hard to get.
you can't
but
find 22s anywhere right now.
actually, Walmart had some today.
Did they?
Yeah, they had some 22 long Magnums. I think they were Magnums. No, they were just 22 longs. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They're hard to get right now.
Our usual interview questions that we ask, 3 questions we ask everybody that comes in. How'd you get into firearms? Start with you, Bruce.
My father, actually, I think I was 8 years old, and he gave me my, of course, being a kid, and obviously, I guess my desire for law enforcement started even younger. Remember the old Roy Rogers movies, and the lever action Winchester was something I just dreamed of as a kid. So when I was 8, he bought me a 22 lever action Winchester, and I still have it to this day. And
Cool.
he carried me over to an old abandoned rock quarry, and we did practice, targets on bottles and cans. And then I think when I was about 14, he got me a 30-30 lever action Winchester, and that's where it began.
You remember what your first pistol was?
It was a Beretta Cougar, I believe it was. You don't see too many of those anymore. I think it was a 32 caliber.
Say Cougar?
Cougar. Yeah.
Oh,
Cougar.
we're talking about a gun.
Handguns.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was either the Cougar or the Puma. I can't remember which one. It was the one was a 22 and one was a 32. And
I think the Cougar is the 32.
yeah, a little single
Cougar is a
action.
woman over 32, isn't it?
Probably 40.
You don't have to bite your tongue here.
Okay.
10 Outdoors, how'd you get into firearms?
I always had an interest in firearms, and it started by reading about Alvin C. York, Tennessee hero.
Local
So I
guy.
have to go back to that, and just fascinated with his life and his accomplishments. I didn't actually buy my first gun until I was almost 30 years old. I was in my late 20s, and I've got to mention his name briefly. I worked with Hickok 45. He was my boss. We worked for a company in Nashville, so this was about 26, 27 years ago, 28 years ago, I guess, almost 30 years. And so I've known him for about a third of his life. So anyway,
You know he listens to the show.
I know he does. That's why I said that. So I didn't own any guns at the time. My dad does have a little 22 short high standard, which 22 Plinkster is getting that repaired for me now. So I'll be showing that on YouTube at some point.
Nice.
But in any event, so anyway, Hickok had me up to his house about every week, and this is before John was born. So it goes back a ways. And I was making it about every week. He said, come on up, we'll shoot. I didn't own anything. He just let me shoot his ammo, would feed me, grill something. He's like, is this guy weird or what? So anyway, this went on for a few years.
real
and,
reason.
And finally, before I got married, I knew that was the time to start buying guns. So I did Smith & Wesson 686 357 Magnum 6-inch barrel, and then a Ruger Mini 14, one of the older Ruger Mini 14s.
Still
and
on my bucket list.
yeah, and a Ruger Mark II, and I no longer own any of those. Those are long gone.
Really?
Oh.
In fact, I traded some of those off a few years afterwards when I got married. And then my first semi-automatic handgun, I can't think of the name of the manufacturer, and actually it was one that Hickok owned. He sold it to a dealer that I went in a few days later and bought it. And it was some type of mock-up of a Browning high power, and I can't think of the name of the manufacturer. So that was it, and it kind of didn't really do anything after that. I didn't have anywhere to shoot, which is what a lot of people have a problem now. There's nowhere to go shoot. But then my parents had some land, and I started going down there just shooting at 100 yards or so in the woods, and that was it. And then took a break from it for about 10 or 15 years, and now back into it very seriously.
Any particular reason why you took a break?
Basically working and traveling a lot,
life.
and building a family. Yeah, life kind of came in, and of course I still kept up with it, was interested, and would hook up with Hickok. I think I went out and bought a Glock 22 and a kind of a cheap shotgun, and that was it. But it's really, for me, getting into guns is only happened in about the last 6 or 7 years. It's really snowballed.
That's the kind of way it has for me the last 4 or 5 years for me.
It's pretty intense.
It is.
Yeah.
So no military law enforcement experience?
I don't have any military, don't have any law enforcement experience, no.
And kind of stupid to ask you the same question, Bruce.
No military, but
We do have the law enforcement
do have a little law
experience.
enforcement experience.
You know, I got a question for you, and this is going to help with the listeners. Proper way for people with their handgun carry permit to interact with an officer if they get pulled over?
It's a good question. Yeah.
I've heard two different theories of thought. I've had a lot of people, when I have pulled them over, they present me their license and their carry permit ID. To me, it really doesn't matter. From the time I initiate a traffic stop to the time it's over, I treat everybody as if they possibly have a weapon and they might be intending on killing me. I will say this. Once I've come across somebody who presents they have a valid carry ID, I let out kind of almost a little sigh of relief, because it's not nobody's going to go through the time of taking the class, paying the fees, going through the training to get a carry permit, and then go out there and lose it all to shoot an officer. Mm-hmm. Okay, now are those strange situations occasionally you're going to come across? But yeah, you've got officers out. You had that idiot out there in California recently that. He slandered the face of law enforcement with his actions. But no, most law enforcement officers, including myself, when we see we've got a valid carry permit holder, we say, hey, we've got somebody that's paying attention to the law, and they're probably not something we need to worry too much about. So we'll still stay on guard. But
do you ask them to present it?
No. Now, that is something that I remember when Tennessee first started getting the carry permits. And I backed up another officer on a traffic stop, and when I pull up, the person showed him his ID, and he asked if he could get the weapon out, and so the person that's pulled over told him where the weapon was. Also retrieved it, unloaded it, ran it for a warrant, make sure it's a wanted check on the gun to see if it was stolen, and I didn't want to interfere in the traffic stop, but after a stop, once the citizen drove away, he let the citizen drive away with the gun basically unloaded. He said, get back in your car and reload it and get it. And this was a fairly young, new officer at the time. And I asked him after we're off to the side, I was like, why did you do that? And he said, well, there was a weapon in the car. I'm like, I understand that, but you need to understand that is not the person we generally need to worry about. That is a law-abiding citizen who has taken the legal steps to become legally allowed to carry a weapon. They're not the one that made us look bad by going out there and unloading their weapon when they haven't done any crime. A traffic offense maybe, but no crime there. I usually tell them, somebody tells the car, thank you for letting me know. If you would, just keep your hands on your steering wheel while I can conduct our business, things like that.
The few times that I have been pulled over, I always present my carry permit. And just like you said, they always, thank you, I appreciate you for, letting me know that. Could you, let me know where the weapon is at this point? Where is it?
Right.
And I always say, it's on my ankle, it's on my hip, it's on my console, wherever it is. And they say, thank you. If you would, just keep your hands on the steering wheel, and, they continue on, and that's been the end of it.
Right.
It kind of brings up a couple of good. You could take two tangents to this. One, I think people need to be aware of what the law is in their state.
Absolutely.
Because some states require that if you are pulled over by law enforcement, and if you do have a carry permit, you are required by law in that state to inform the officer of that. The other part of that is, and I just lost my train of thought, but the other part of that is I've pretty much got a prepared statement. And as I travel through different states on vacation and so forth, I really try to be aware of what the laws are in that state. In the event I am pulled over, which I haven't had a speeding ticket in 20 years. So, and I've been caught running moonshine, but other than that. But
that doesn't count.
It was over in DeKalb County.
Isn't that legal in DeKalb?
That's right. I think it's good that I feel like that I owe that officer the courtesy, whether or not it's required. And like you said, you had a sigh of relief that the person had been cognizant enough to do that. Even if, and the way I feel about it, and it's just my personal opinion, if the law does not require it where I am at that point, I still feel a responsibility to that law enforcement officer to maybe depress or suppress, not suppress, but kind of let the air out of the situation.
De-escalate.
And like you said, exactly. And you just confirmed that's exactly what happened. So it's great to hear that feedback, because I have somewhat of a prepared statement. I have my hand. You show your hands. My hands. Some officers say put your hands on the steering wheel. I will put my hands kind of hanging out the window with my ID. And again, I'm not pulled over, but this is my prepared. I think that's a good thing to have, is that preparation and kind of a plan. And I plan to tell the officer, whether or not it's required. As a courtesy to you, I am letting you know that I am a permit carrier and there is a handgun, and tell them where it is. If it's on my person, where it is on my person, whether or not it has a chambered round, or if it's in my glove compartment, if it's beside me in the seat. And it may not be required by law. And some people say, you're giving up some rights. You don't have to. I understand that. I think, but as a courtesy to the officer in that situation, as you said, de-escalate, that's my plan.
But at the same time, it's your right to tell him to.
It is.
Right, exactly. And so I have no problem with that.
Sure.
Absolutely. It is a personal choice. And if the officer is doing his job how he should be, throughout the entire traffic stop, if you haven't told him, he should expect that you have a weapon in the car. Just because any incident of law enforcement comes involved in, there's always one weapon involved, whether the person has one or the officer always has a gun on him. And we've had officers who have had, been overpowered, their weapons have been taken away from them. So the best advice I give anybody, whether you want to announce that you have a carry permit or you announce you have a weapon in the car, always just understand, like you said, put your hands on the steering wheel when the officer approaches and things like that. It just lets him know that you have an understanding that his safety, your safety, things like, it's
but
the hands that.
At the same time, can't you guys, once you pull somebody over and you get their license and you go run it, doesn't their permit come up whether they have a permit or not?
Yes. Now, if we run one here in this state and say if you're from another state.
Right, we're talking state specific here too. For
it'll come up whether you have
out of Tennessee listeners.
Whether it's been canceled or anything like that, revoked. But to this day, I've not come across anyone who has had a revoked carry permit when I've done a DL check on them. Now I've come with it, it has been expired or something like that. But it's most carry permit. Don't worry about law enforcement. We're quite relieved to know we've got a carry permit holder out there.
Well, here's another point, and again, it goes off into another tangent, and I'm sure you've had training on it. And that is if you have a carry permit and it's not on your person, but it's in your glove compartment. And so you have your hands on the steering wheel and the officer comes up and you've already got your license out, but you didn't have time to get your registration out. I personally feel that if you have a handgun and it's in the glove compartment where you're trying to get your registration, you want to pop that. You don't want to pop that.
No, absolutely not.
And the officer sees a gun, because then if you have it to any extent de-escalated, you just took it to DEFCON 5.
Yeah.
So
that gun shifted as you opened that and it fell out.
Exactly. Chambered
Wasn't
around
there a story about that here recently that happened to
I think so. Yeah.
to a teenage girl. She was in her dad's car or something like that.
Yes.
And she didn't know there was a gun in the glove box, and she reached over to get the insurance or something like that.
And so
that fell out and he shot her.
Yeah, the officer's going to guns.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if they don't draw, it's there. Just depends. If they're in a rural situation out in the middle of nowhere, the officer may be more inclined to draw and have a weapon presented. I mean, again, that comes back to training, and I'm not law enforcement. That's just how the way I think.
Everybody's going to default to the level of training. That's whether it's a law enforcement officer or a civilian. That whole term of rose to the occasion. We all kind of go back to what we've been trained to do.
So, bottom line, it's just better to go ahead and announce it.
You can't go wrong.
Right. My permit got me out of a ticket a couple weeks ago. I told you about that.
I will tell you, if somebody shows me a carry permit, the high likelihood that I'm going to have a nice day.
Well, I didn't want to say anything on mine, but the times that I did that, it was just...
We kind of look at you're on our side, so have a nice day.
Yeah.
Somebody pulled me over for turning right on red when it said no right on red, and I reverted back to everything I was taught. Don't say the word gun. Say you have a loaded firearm, present your license with your carry permit. And as I said I have a loaded firearm. It's at 4 o'clock, and I have another one inside the console. And she kind of looked back for a second, and she goes, thanks for telling me. Then she came back and went back, ran everything, came back. She goes, look, you handed me this and doing everything you were supposed to. That tells me right there you're a law-abiding citizen. Just be careful next time. Right. I was like, wow. Cool.
Exactly. It shows responsibility.
Plus, when you see that person with that handgun carry permit, they've gone through a pretty extensive background check, so they're a decent person for the most part.
Yeah.
Or a bad person that's never done anything bad.
Or never been caught.
Yeah. One of the other questions we have is we talk about pop culture, guns involved in pop culture. Name one, either movie, your favorite TV show, or music involved with firearms.
For me, I think one that the bad part about becoming a law enforcement officer was all the movies I grew up loving, they've been totally destroyed. I loved Lethal Weapon. Thought it was one of the greatest movies ever made until I got into police work, and I've never seen so many
Mel
fallacies.
Gibson. Yeah.
It was crazy. And Die Hard, the whole Bruce Willis. That was the reason I went and bought my '92 Beretta, was because it's. But you'll notice that pop culture has a significant influence on what guns people are buying. I mean, you'll go back there to when Clint Eastwood had that Desert Eagle. I don't know which was it, Sudden Impact or something like that. All of a sudden, they were selling Desert Eagles left and right. Yeah. Lethal Weapon and Die
Beretta
Hard.
92, yeah.
Those two movies did more for the Beretta 92 than anything.
It did.
And Lethal Weapon hit about the time that the 9 and the semi-automatic was becoming common with law enforcement. They were replacing their revolvers with the 9mm Beretta. It might have been the Glock or the SIG or something else, but that Beretta was so glamorized. And that it seems like to me more so in the first one than it was any of the other.
It's a pretty gun too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
sexy
weapon.
gun.
So it's
that's another one on my bucket list. What about you, 10-9?
Well, actually, you hit one of my movies, the Lethal Weapon, and this was back. It was on VHS, so we're sitting down and watching it repeatedly, and I guess you could say you might be a redneck or a gun enthusiast if you're sitting there watching a movie like that and you're holding the guns while you're watching a movie. I mean, no one's ever done that, right?
Oh,
so
no.
You're watching World War II movies or Lethal Weapon or Full Metal Jacket, and you're sitting there holding an M1A while you're watching a movie. Of course, I've never done that, but no, you haven't either.
So
you do it unloaded, right?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So you're saying I'm normal that this past episode of Justified, when I bought my Glock 19, I was holding my Glock 19 watching Justified?
That's the next one for me. Right now, if you were to say, what is a current show, and it is absolutely Justified. I cannot get enough of that show.
It's a good show.
I can't get enough of the gun action. I can't get enough of the humor, the sarcasm, the plot lines. It is probably about the most perfect show I've ever seen.
Plus, we live in the same kind of...
we're just a few hundred miles from where the show was portrayed.
Actually, I went to Harlan County 2 summers ago, and it's
Did you really?
It's a pretty place. It is. Let me say one thing about the movies. If any of your listeners, including yourselves, if y'all see that movie End of Watch, please disregard everything associated with law enforcement.
Oh, yeah, with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, it's just atrocious.
I think I've seen that.
That was pretty bad.
It makes law enforcement look like a bunch of hotheads that have no control over their discipline.
A lot of them do that.
We do not get. There's not a lot of movies out there that really.
The maker of that movie was also the maker of Training Day, which did the same thing.
It did
That's the one I was trying to think of. That's the one that had
same maker, same people
Denzel.
who made the same movie. Yep.
Yeah,
It is not a reflection of the patrol officers across this nation. It's just some other Hollywood
glamorization is all.
That's
it is.
amazing. I
It's to
can't
sell
imagine
movies, sell tickets.
I can't imagine Hollywood putting out anything that would be a misrepresentation.
No.
You're right, but the thing that scares me is that's what the majority of people, they see something like that, and that's what they think. They think
really
law
think
enforcement are like that.
Yeah, 10 Outdoors 9, you're kind of our expert that we had pulled in for the 9mm talk on our 9th episode. Before we get into that, I have a few questions. We threw out a question on Facebook. Any questions for 10 Outdoors 9? We got a few back. We got some odd ones, really, really odd ones.
It can't be worse than what I'm getting in private messages.
We got some legitimate ones. We'll start with an odd one. This guy said, who do you prefer to listen to more, Loretta Lynn or Lori Morgan? And that was from a guy named 22 Plankster.
Wow.
I'm assuming that's
I don't know why I didn't put that together. I don't know why I didn't put that together.
Is he stating it in like today's terms or the young Lori Morgan?
It's irrelevant. Trust me.
Okay.
It's irrelevant.
It's an inside joke.
I don't know why I didn't put that together.
So
he's going to be laughing.
We got flambasted about doing inside jokes. So,
well,
it is in.
At least it's inside for them and not us.
for them, okay.
Yeah, we don't even know about it, but they'll get.
Let's just say it is an inside joke and it's disgusting. Okay, let's just stop there.
Okay.
We also had
edit.
I can't believe it.
a legitimate one. Listener JKL writes, I think I have settled on getting a 357 SIG. In your 357 SIG videos, they were compared as a faster plus P or plus P plus 9mm. I'm buying it for defense purposes, and I suppose my question for 10 Outdoors 9 is, with 9mm being more scarce at this moment, is a 357 SIG a worthy investment, especially if I buy a 9mm conversion barrel?
There's about 5 questions in that. I have my
Dissect it how you wish.
video still running. I brought one of my Glock 19s out tonight. I will tell you that's the first time that I've carried the Glock 19 in about 7 months. I started carrying 357 SIG and the Glock 32 about 7 months ago, and it kind of comes back to, I think you kind of touched on training and so forth a minute ago. I think it's possible, and this is something we can talk about as we get into the 9mm discussion. I think it's very possible, and this is what my goal was. I started shooting 9mm about 12, 13 years ago, and I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of rounds I put through my Glocks. And other than that first little knockoff Browning I had 20-something years ago, it's been the Glock 9mm. So I think you can train up to other calibers. Now, the person who's asking the question, I think 357 SIG is an excellent choice. And when you compare it to 9mm, a lot of people that are big fans of the 9mm, and I am, will say that, well, you know, when you get a plus P plus like the Winchester 127 grain, or you get some of the things that, say, a double tap or an Underwood ammo is loading, where they're just supercharging these velocities, and you're getting, quote unquote, up into 357 SIG territory. Yes and no, and that's something we can get into as we open this dialogue on the 9. There's just something magical that happens with a 357 SIG when you get up to 1375 to 1400 feet per second. 125 grain bullet, and you can get 124 grain in 9mm. So there's a lot of ways to answer that, but I think there's something there is unique that is beneficial with the 357 SIG. And when you're out shopping right now, I have really stocked up more on 357 SIG ammo in the last 3 months than I did prior to the election in December and all these things, because everyone else is not buying it. No, a lot of people don't know anything about the caliber. Tennessee Highway Patrol carries it in a Glock 31. There's a lot of state agencies that carry it. I don't know about so many local agencies, but they see something in the caliber and they see the same thing that I see. So I think it is a good investment. My conversion is from the Glock 23 to the Glock 32 or the 357 SIG, but I think you can do it with a 9. I would almost recommend, though, to go to a 40 or 357 SIG frame, because I know in the Glocks there's a little bit more beef in the slide with the 40s and the 357 SIG Glocks than there is in the 9mm. There's just a little bit more weight, and it's somewhere in that frame or slide to work with that. And plus, your spring setup needs to be able to handle the higher pressures.
Get another odd one. There's a couple of inside jokes, I think, in these questions.
Is this from the same person who asked the first question?
It's got a different name on it, though. This one says, how long does it take Bigfoot to get into his costume? And that's from David C.
Here's another related one also. It says, where is Bigfoot?
Where is...
Yeah, ask him where Bigfoot is. Figured he would be out more, being winter and all. Also, would the Foot ever consider a 1911 for his sidearm?
Unbelievable.
And that's from Treble Mountain. I don't know if you know that one.
Trouble Mountain.
So that's actually a legit question.
Yeah.
But the question from this David character, I would say that, what was the question about Bigfoot?
How long does it take Bigfoot to get into his costume?
It depends on the temperature and how much Taco Bell he had before putting on the costume.
Wait a minute, I'm really crushed here. That's a costume? That's not
Bigfoot is real, so we don't want to. That's a myth we don't want to bust.
Okay, I just
Bigfoot is real.
Sure.
Yeah, Bigfoot is real.
I'm starting to feel
the second question.
Flashback from Santa Claus.
Bigfoot lives in Duck River, Tennessee, which is on the Natchez Trace Parkway.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, that's where Bigfoot's from.
He likes
a lot of
beef
different
jerky.
signs.
He likes beef jerky too. You've seen the commercial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a little general store down there in the little town of Duck River, which I believe is on Highway 50 or somewhere. It's near Water Valley in that community.
Wow.
Down around Natchez Trace. I'm not exactly sure what county. It's either Hickman or Murray County.
I think it's Murray County.
Okay, that's where Bigfoot is from. So hopefully there's some listeners down there that are aware of that. But Bigfoot
Be careful around him.
Yeah, but he's friendly.
He's friendly in the video.
Yeah, and it's actually, I have a video where Bigfoot is shooting a little bit of Colt 1911.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And some ARs.
Gotcha.
And some Glocks. And some M1s.
So how does
Bigfoot's a
he get
badass.
How does he get his finger in those trigger guards?
Well, that's a good question. The problem with the 1911
So he just uses
is the grip is the grip safety, and I will not. And having been there while I was filming Bigfoot doing this, my perspective, of course, was that Bigfoot did have some problems with the 1911 because of the grip safety in his hands. But Bigfoot is very proficient with the Glock 19, and there's some videos proving that.
Another legitimate question. Listener Jerome wrote, is there really a noticeable difference between Luger, Parabellum, etc.? All the different types of 9mm, or names.
Names?
Luger, Parabellum, 9x19.
No, there's no difference there. It's all different variations of the same concept, of the same 9mm.
And one last weird one. This guy's got a crazy name. Why is it when people shoot striker fire pistols, they tend to shoot low left, but when they shoot 1911, they're dead on? This one's from Deerslayer 300 Windmaster.
This sounds like someone I talked to earlier today.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, that conversation. It's something about the striker fire trigger, because I isolated why I shoot low and left. And when I shoot low and left, and it's when I'm shooting a striker fire gun. I was doing it with the XDS 45 this weekend, and I do it with my Glocks. But I can take a 1911, and something about the way that trigger comes back, I can hit IPSC at 200 yards with a 1911 more often than I can a Glock. Those are fantastic questions. It's amazing how many of those could have come from the same person.
All different names, though. So,
that's right,
yeah.
Right. They're troll accounts.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Go ahead and give us a little bit about the history of the 9mm.
I was taking a sip of water doing a Rubio there. I will make sure we get that. Oh, there you go. Put it on the camera. I'll tell you what little I know about it. It's interesting. This round has been around quite a while. 1902 was developed by George Luger, as in the German Luger in Germany. And coincidentally, it was developed in conjunction with some officials from the U.S. government. Of course, this was all, a decade or so before World War II, but who would have known that the U.S. was helping to develop this? And I think it came out of the question a moment ago, 9x19 is what the Parabellum or 9mm is, obviously now, but I believe it started from the 9x21 and was neck down from that. So that's my understanding. In 1906, it was introduced out by the German army, and of course then they used it against us in World War I and subsequently after that in World War II. So that's kind of how I got started. And it was ball ammo. It was either 115 or 116 grain, whereas your NATO now is 124 typically. So, the 9mm it was a wartime caliber. And then where it really came into mainstream in the U.S., coming back to lethal weapon. When the Beretta 92 came out, and then then the Beretta was adopted by the military, so you got that going on, replacing the 45, which really hacked off a lot of people because you're using ball ammo, and ball ammo, either way is not going to be that effective. But 9mm ball ammo versus, because they're carrying a 124 grain ball versus 230 grain ball and a 45 is just not as effective. So a lot of guys are saying, of course, they're still using it. It's just not that effective, but it can be.
Now, when you say ball ammo, that was one thing that I had to learn when I first got into it. Explain that to the listeners a little bit.
I'm sure that was, you were thinking of various ways to take that.
When I first heard it, I cringed a little bit, but, now I know, but explain that.
I'm glad that was your reaction. So anyway, ball ammo is typically full metal jacket ammo, and now you have full metal jacket truncated ammo. I've seen some in 45 and also in 40, but ball ammo, I think that might be coming out of the military and some background there, but it actually probably started with 45, 230 grain ball, and you hear it called that all the time. I'd love to see somebody advertise it as 230 grain ball packaging. There's a lot of different advertising possibilities.
So they can distinguish between a solid bullet versus a hollow point.
Right. But I think there's a lot of interesting marketing possibilities if you call it ball ammo, but whatever.
Yeah. You go ahead, trademark that, You may be on
exactly.
Something.
So, but
whole other market.
So it didn't really hit the mainstream here in the U.S. with consumers until what we were talking about a moment ago with Lethal Weapon and glamorizing the Beretta. Then after that, of course, law enforcement, I guess in about the 80s or thereabouts or maybe 70s, some of the older listeners my age, maybe a little bit older, will be familiar with the name Frank Serpico. You've all heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Have you really? Mm-hmm. Okay. New York officer. I think he did some undercover work, and this was back in the 70s. In fact, that was a book I read when I was in my teens.
Wasn't there a movie made on him?
Yeah, there was.
Al Pacino, right?
Al Pacino,
yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Serpico. So there may be some people that say, oh, wow, I forgot all about that. But he was carrying a Browning high power, and one of the few officers of the day who carried a 9mm semi-automatic. So you got that going on. That, I guess, somewhat predated Lethal Weapon as far as the pop culture of this. Of course, Lethal Weapon was, fake and false, and Serpico was actually real life. That was actually
based on
the nonfiction. Yes, nonfiction.
Based on facts.
So then what happened? Law enforcement said, we're out there working with bad guys, and we need something that's more effective than a .38 Special, because the ballistics of a 9mm are superior a little bit to the .38 Special. Plus, you had the capacity. Then 357 Magnum, which is still used by law enforcement in some pockets, but it was just a matter of getting away from the 6-shot revolver and the ease of reloading a speed loader. Even see pros, I think, that can reload obviously a semi-automatic faster than they can a revolver with a speed loader. So it was capacity and relative to the 38 better ballistics with the 9mm. So you had this big wave, and then the 9mm took a ding in 1986 with the Miami shootout. Y'all familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that.
Okay, yeah. What happened was a couple of bad guys. There's actually a movie made about that. I think David Soul, an actor, was portrayed.
Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, Starsky. Yeah, he portrayed, I believe, one of the bad guys. And what's the other guy who was in a sitcom with? Anyway, I'm digressing here. Burt Gummer, I believe, was the other one, if I'm not mistaken. The guy who played Burt Gummer in the Tremors movies. I think he was.
Oh, we talking about
the guy from Facts?
What's his name? Michael.
Ties?
What's his name? Michael.
Yeah.
Michael. Is it Michael Gross? Is that
yes,
right?
Michael Gross.
Is that his name?
Yeah, Michael Gross.
Okay, yeah. So I think if I remember correctly, he was the other bad guy in the Hollywood portrayal of that incident. But it had a very.
I was thinking of Remo Williams. Sorry, the guy, Fred Ward, is that his name?
I'm not.
He was in Tremors too.
Okay, yeah.
Fred Ward,
Joe Dirt.
Yeah,
of course, they all tie into who's the other guy that was in Tremors that everybody makes a connection to.
Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
7 degrees of Kevin
We just
Bacon.
made our Kevin Bacon connection.
Wow, that's a bonus. That wasn't even in the script here. So where we're going with this is that once the 9mm got in the mainstream, and then in 1982, and some people don't realize it was that far back, but in 1982. Glock released the 17, the 9mm. So they released that, and the 19 came out a little bit behind that. We have a 17 on the table. We have a 17 and a couple of 19s.
Got a 22 also. Of course, that's not our 9, but
so law enforcement started moving to the 9s because of high capacity, and it does have some better ballistic capabilities compared to the 38. But the 1986 Miami incident actually changed firearms and calibers and so forth to where we are right now. A couple of law enforcement FBI agents lost their lives that day. There's been all types of discussion about tactics and so forth, but a lot of it came back to the ammo, which was 9mm 115 grain Winchester silver tips. And the silver tips, some people still carry those things. It's not a type I'm going to carry. It just has a history of not expanding well. So they were carrying the silver tips, and the FBI decided they need something more powerful than a handgun. So what came along? The Bren 10, the 10mm, and then Miami Vice, and that was one of the first guns. There's another series, Don Johnson and Sonny Crockett. So Don Johnson, I think in the earlier days of Miami Vice, was carrying the Bren 10mm. So they developed the 10mm, and then after a period of time, the FBI and law enforcement said, we can't handle the recoil on this. We're not accurate with it. Our follow-ups are not good with the 10. So what happened? They dropped it to the 40, so shortened the case a little bit, and worked primarily beginning with the 180 grain bullets. So the 9 took some dings, but it came back, and this goes to a lot of different areas, but I think now people still feel that the 9mm is just really not that effective. In law enforcement, the 40 caliber has really, I think, become the dominant caliber over the 9. There's still some agencies. When I think of Nashville here locally, Nashville PD carries the Glock 22, and I think they carry 165 grain Rangers. Don't ask me how I know that. And then in again, THP, I mentioned that a moment ago, state troopers carry 357 SIG. So you're looking at that and going, well, if you've got a large agency in Tennessee that's carrying that, Metro Department, then you got the state. So what's wrong with the 9mm? There really isn't anything wrong with the 9mm. It's just that, for one, it's the bottom floor for defensive calibers that I will personally carry. It's the bottom floor. But I think that the 9mm, when you're comparing it to the 40 and 45 and 357 SIG for that matter, just those 4, I'm not even bringing the 380 into this discussion. It's a 9mm light. And you can't make the 380 into a 9mm. You can't make the 9mm into a 45 or a 40 or a 357 SIG. They all have to work in their respective compartments. Okay,
they've all got their place.
They all have their place,
yeah.
And the thing about the 9mm, and I've been testing ammo now independently. No one pays me to do it. It's just a hobby of mine. I'm fascinated by it, and I started out 4 years ago just testing ammo, and that's kind of how I got into YouTube. And I was working with Hickok, and he said, "Hey," he posted a video to YouTube, and this was in 2007 or 2008. And I said, "I don't even know what YouTube is." So I signed up, set up an account, but didn't post any videos. So I said, what can I do to contribute to this in the gun community? Because it was going to be gun related. It was going to be gun related. Although I started out with some crappy little videos and some other stuff, it was going to be a Second Amendment channel, and that's foremost what it is. So I started testing ammo using Wetpack, and the only caliber.
What's
Wetpack. Basically, it's probably the oldest form of ammo testing. It's the least expensive, and anybody can test it. It's where you take newspaper or phone books, and you soak it. You have to soak it for a period of time to get the saturation. Otherwise, just the external part of what you've wrapped up in the Wetpack is going to get wet. And I actually started testing Wetpack in my backyard about 8 or 10 years ago with the Glock 19, and that's the only caliber I had. I mean, 9mm was the only caliber I had until about 3 years ago. Can you imagine that? And then it's just, now I have probably 15 different calibers. So, literally. So now I'm testing all that. But I've tested so many 9mm loads, 'cause that's all I did for the first couple of years. Now I've expanded into other calibers, including rifles and shotguns and so forth. 9mm is effective, but it is very ammo dependent. I think it's more ammo dependent on your choice than any other caliber.
When you say ammo dependent, what clarify that?
You get into velocity and bullet weights and bullet composition. Whether it's a bonded bullet, a non-bonded bullet, you can start another tangent or argument that really only, this is like the Dianne Feinstein argument. I'm sorry I had to say that. But where you absolutely, as a civilian, you should not have to use bonded bullets because they're designed for barrier penetration. But again, it comes back to that argument. We can buy them. You can buy your Gold Dots. You can buy your Golden Saber bonded. You can buy your HSTs. We can buy all that stuff.
And see, this is where I geek out completely. Our listeners know that I'm a scientist by trade before I got into the career I'm in now.
And that's kind of my career as well. So,
and when I first got into YouTube videos, Hickok was one of the first ones, and I enjoy him. You know, Plinkster.
He's pretty good for a 90-year-old shooter, isn't he?
He is. I thought he was a little older than that.
He's coming up on 93.
Speaking of Bigfoot.
Yeah. But, you know, I enjoy all those videos. But then somebody turned me on to your videos a couple months ago, and
it took that long.
It's got the science, it's got the physics, it's got the ballistics.
It's got a little bit of comedy.
Oh, a little bit of comedy.
A little bit.
I love that stuff. I geek out to the science of, and that's one of the things that got me back into the firearms this second time around of me being a firearms enthusiast, is the science behind it and the access to all that data that I had now. To where when I had one back when I was 22, 23, I was like, I got it for home protection. No big deal. But then when I started learning the physics behind everything, it was just like, oh. So that's why I kind of geek out to your videos a little bit.
It's actually, I think that's really good feedback. I'm glad to hear that, because another reason why I did this, you couldn't find any information like that. No. I mean, you can go out there and ATK, which is a company that manufactures Federal and Spear ammo, which is, I think, two of the best premium products out there. When you can get the HSTs and the Gold Dots. The Gold Dots you can find pretty much anywhere, but the HSTs are a little bit harder to come by. But in any event, where was I going with this? 4 years ago when I started doing this, there was one other guy on YouTube who was posting ammo tests, shooting into water. I think he's trying to get into test blocks like I am and other things now. But I said, and that was another thing. I said, one, there's not a lot of information, and I have to think that permit carriers such as myself, or people who are just interested in ballistics, would like to be able to get this data. And even with the internet and searching, you can find some of the ATK reports where they will have clinics with the law enforcement agency, and they will test ammo that law enforcement agency is using or they're looking to adopt. And one thing that really, I don't know if it was encouraging to me, because what I was trying to accomplish by doing this through YouTube, or anybody can just dial up and see it, or it was disappointing. And that was, I was hearing from so many people in the law enforcement field all over the U.S. and even some from South America specifically, because a lot of those guys in South America, they're limited to 380. So if you do some research, it's like, that's kind of disturbing. So I was hearing from a lot of law enforcement folks who said, I'd be interested if you would test this caliber or this load, because it's what our agency uses, and we have no idea its capabilities. So that was the disturbing part, was that a lot of folks were just buying up ammo, and it was going through a purchasing office in a county. And in my county, I know several folks out there, and I was talking to one of the county officers, and I said, let me look at your Glock. And we were at his house. No, we're at a convenience store. But seriously, we were at his house. we were at his house. And said, look at your Glock. And he knew I did a lot with Glocks and a Glock fanboy. And I looked at his ammo. And this is kind of the sick disease that I have acquired in the last 3 or 4 years. I can look at around, and I can tell you who makes it and the bullet weight. Bring it on.
Pop quiz.
Bring it on.
Hang on, let me see. If It's
Here we
radio, I gotta
go.
explain
Okay,
it.
we have a law enforcement test. Oh my God.
Okay.
I got
Wait, I've got one over here for you.
You got one right.
that's the 230 grain gold dot. Yeah,
This one.
I mean obviously it's a Spear. It's a 45 ACP. This is what Bruce is
that's that one.
carrying here. But
Oh, yeah.
you can look and see how far the bullet is seated, and I'm saying that's not a 185, it's not a 200, and it's not a 230 because I know that's a 230 grain gold dot.
Do you approve?
Oh, absolutely.
Was he right? He's right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 230 grain.
Here's
gold.
left hand's carry.
All right, I'm going to take my glasses off to do this. Oh. It almost looks like a Federal or Hornady bulk ammo. PPU, Privy Partisan. Wow, where'd you find that?
Yeah.
It's Privy Partisan, and it is 180 grain because you can see
Yes,
where the
it
bullet
is.
is seated to that point right there. Is that correct?
Very good.
I'm
yes,
2 for
sir.
All right.
This is disturbing. It's a sick disease.
Mine's easy because my little polymer insert gives it away.
Oh, it's a critical defense. You got the zombie, man.
The zombie load.
So I criticized you earlier for getting a Glock 19. Of course, that was being sarcastic. But
So now you stand by it.
those were. A
I stand by
Christmas
the. I was
The
being
ammo
sarcastic
choice.
with the Glock 19, but with this crap, I have
That's as
tested.
gimmicky as it gets, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
It was a Christmas gift, so
That's the 180 grain critical defense. So you're getting. This is another sick thing. I know the stats. So they're advertising just over 1,000 feet per second with this. I like Hornady, and I'm not going to sit here tonight and bash companies or ammo like I would you and your Glock 19, sarcastic. but seriously, I get the questions all the time, and there's no best ammo, but there is some better ammo, and that's where the 9mm. I think you had to be very.
Depends on what you're using it for,
Y'all have
right?
given me everything but 9mm for the pop quiz, and I can tell you right now. Oh,
we got
he's got
more
a backup.
coming.
That's a 380, isn't it? No, it's a 32. It's a Remington Full Metal Jacket ball. Now the weight I don't know, but I'm going to say around. It's a 32. I'm going to say 100 to 100, anywhere from 90 to 100 grains.
Couldn't tell you myself.
Okay,
honestly.
it's Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
But the zombie max load from Hornady is the same thing as critical defense. It's just a different color insert.
Yep, that's it.
And my criticism of the critical defense is that it's underpowered. It's manufactured to be a low recoiling load in whatever caliber you're buying it for, but their velocities have always consistently come down so far below their advertised. And rarely I hit the advertised. Sometimes it's over, and that's just atmospheric conditions, elevation, and whatnot.
Isn't that one
And
that
the-
came out with the critical duty?
Yeah, the critical duty's a little better for
Critical
9mm.
duties for penetration, where the critical defense, they don't want the penetration.
I think the anatomy of the lead, and that is basically the amount of tin that's in the lead. I tested a Brennicky slug recently, getting off topic a tad bit, but I tested a Brennicky slug recently, which has a higher content of tin in it, so it's a harder lead, and that's what they've done with the critical defense. So that's a Winchester white box, 115 grain Full Metal Jacket. Velocity out of a Glock 19 of about
That's what it is.
1,000.
Nailed it.
That's what it is.
1,150 feet per second.
This guy's
average.
good.
So
When you were
it's a
talking about
disturbing,
the,
sick disease.
I was going to ask you about the critical duty ammo, specifically the Hornady, and in the 9mm.
Which I have
the
a box with me tonight.
Plus P plus.
Yeah.
I was going to ask your opinion on that, just in general, not for any specific or
Yeah, I
purposeful
actually
use.
brought about 20 or 25 different kinds of 9mm ammo tonight. I didn't know what you were doing with regard to the video showing that, but I brought a box with me. One thing I like about it is the bullet weight. I think there is a place in the 9mm ammo lineup for any company to produce something other than 124 or 147. There's such a wide discrepancy of velocity and energy levels between 124 and 147 grain 9mm. Now, I am a fan of both weights. In the 124, 'cause I get this question all the time. There's a lot of people. I've advertised myself as being a big proponent of 9mm and carrying the Glock 19 and showing videos where I've got 6 of them and I've got 200 magazines laying there. I mean, seriously, and things like that. So I'm kind of invested in that. But where I'm going with this is that I get questions about every other day. What 9mm ammo is your favorite or your best, or would you carry? And it would be a couple of things. The 124 grain plus P Spear Gold Dot. That is a very good load. It's bonded load. It has street credentials, and that's another thing.
Street cred.
Dude, the Zombie Max does not have street creds. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. No, it just doesn't.
There's not
like
been a
that.
zombie outbreak yet. How can it have street cred when we don't have zombies to test it on?
I have the AWB passes, but anyway, I didn't say that. But the Zombie Max, oh man, that's just ridiculous. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about that off record here. That's crap. I'm sorry. The thing about it is, and I've told people this, Hornady has flooded every store everywhere.
It was brilliant
with their
marketing.
product.
Brilliant marketing.
Whoever their rep
Genius.
has got to be a millionaire or a billionaire.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
genius.
Their
Yeah.
product, I mean, they do a very good job of marketing their product. Some companies don't, and I won't get into that. But some companies just do a really bad job of marketing their product, or they overhype. Federal Guard dog, but I didn't say that.
There's one thing I'd like to bring back. I was talking about the FBI incident. I want to make sure that your listeners and yourselves take away from. Everybody want to try to point to the ballistics of that situation, but you also they didn't look at the fact that you had two very dedicated, mindseted individuals in that Miami shootout. Mindset is probably one of the most incredible things when it comes to weapons warfare. Okay, I've seen, and historically across the world, with 22 is probably the most common killing weapons out there. There's more people have been dying from 22 shots than probably any other weapon out there. That's Mafia loved them for years for that simple fact. But those two men were completely committed and dedicated to what their cause of action was going to be.
Capable.
And
They
capable.
were military
Right.
trained.
They carried a Mini 14, among other things.
Yeah.
And the problem with a lot of those agents that went there, they went with the false concept because they had mass in numbers that this is going to be an easy situation to win.
I agree, and that's the impression I got. Again, you can say hit or miss as far as Hollywood's portrayal of that, because you can read the reports all over the internet, and you can go look at the movie. And the thing about the movie is there were scenes where the two bad guys were shooting people point blank range. I think they robbed an armored car, if I'm not mistaken, at a grocery store. So again, I know they try to portray that as accurately as possible. I'm going, wow, broad daylight. In the middle of the day, and these guys had the cojones to go in and were tagging people point blank range in this parking lot and just be nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
And then I agree 100%, because what got me as I watched the movie, and that last scene developed, they're in the neighborhood. And here's another crazy thing. You can go into Google Maps and see that neighborhood, and you're going, I can't believe this happened here. In South Miami. But you look at the way Hollywood portrayed them, they weren't being nonchalant, the officers, about how they approached them, but it almost seemed like, if I remember, they were just riding next to them parallel down the street.
When you
I'm going, wait a minute, I'm not in law enforcement, but the tactics is just using common sense didn't add up for me.
And there was a lot of factors that went in that day, and I want everybody to understand that I have gone on calls where you've seen somebody shot, we're responding to a shot, and you arrive and you're asking, okay, where's the victim? And the guy's standing there, and he's got 3 rounds in his center mass. Mm-hmm. Handgun, the body can absorb a lot of damage and continue, but if your mind, the LA shootout, okay,
right.
That one officer right there had been basically shot in the hand, but he told himself that he was going to die because he'd been shot. He had the psychological effect on there, so he basically went into a shock situation because he did not have a life-threatening injury because he had been hit. He had psychologically told himself, hey, I get shot, I die. Mm-hmm. No, you can absorb a lot of damage to the human body. Your mind will quit before your body does if you allow it. So and that goes back to those books I was talking about that we've learned through the On Killing and On Combat of trying to get the bulletproof mind and being prepared for.
And you bring up a good point there too. I've talked to some other law enforcement that said the training has changed, because in the past it's like, okay, when they go through their training scenarios, if you get shot, no matter what or where, you play dead.
No, we don't allow that anymore.
Dead. So in their mindset, the training kicks in, and in training, if I get shot, then I lay down and I'm dead. So they've reversed that now.
Default to their level of training.
Right. And said, okay, you get shot, you just keep going through the training scenarios now, too.
I think that happened in the incident over here in Nashville locally, for people who are familiar with this area, just south of the Davidson County line and getting to Williamson County and Brentwood. The incident a few years ago, and it may have been further back than that, I want to say he robbed a bank, and this happened in the middle of the street on Franklin Road, which is US 31 in Nashville. And I want to say that he had either an AR or
he did.
an AR. He hit some officers, and the officers stayed in the fight. And I remember that specifically. So everything y'all are saying here is playing up to that.
Yeah.
I remember that incident locally.
So is 9mm? It's you would think it's more attractive to beginning shooters due to recoil, cost of ammo, and et cetera, et cetera.
I do think 9mm is going to be attractive to beginning shooters because beginning shooters, I think their primary concern. One of their primary concerns is recoil, even if they've shot 22s or something else. But if they are truly just getting into the sport and feeling like they need to protect themselves with a handgun, that's going to be the thing. And so how do they find out that it's soft recoiling? It could be watching people at the range, watching YouTube videos, and just talking to people, law enforcement or whatnot. I think that's going to be attractive. Another thing is capacity. I mean, capacity speaks volumes. Volume, capacity, the same thing. But I think people are going to be looking at that. So they see the recoil, or they actually try it at a range or with a friend. And, of course, we want to try to introduce people as we can to the shooting sport the last few years. And I started out with 9mm. I said, let's not even go 22. If you're going to get into target shooting, you're going to get into carrying having a carry permit. Let's start with 9mm. So that's where we went, and a lot of these guys I've been working with, and some ladies, they started out with 9. So it's the recoil, it's the capacity, it's the just. Of course, now there's a huge variety of handguns in every caliber, but it seems like there's really more 9mm. Glocks, you've got your handful of Glocks, but look at the SIG. I mean, how many SIGs can you get in 9mm? All the different variations. So you look at that. I think if people really get into this, they'll see that 9mm can be effective in a compact handgun. If you're
Plus
going to
all
go,
the rap stars, that's what they talk about.
Well, it's all the raps. When people are buying a handgun, the name that you hear most often is Glock.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And when you look at the movies, you just develop this. In the Glock annual magazine they put out every year,
right.
Now that you have your Glock 19, you need to go out and buy that.
Okay.
You need to go out and get that. You can find it in any bookstore and most of the big grocery stores that have magazines. But it's put out by Glock, and it's basically an advertisement. It's a catalog that goes through all their models. It has a lot of focus on law enforcement, but some with civilians. And of course, they highlight the 9mm, which is what we're talking about tonight.
The gun enthusiast version of the Victoria's Secret.
Yeah. What was the reference point for that with the Victoria's Secret? Something that, and this is another inside joke, but it's current.
Yeah.
What was
Bigfoot is?
Oh yeah, I think we had text back and forth today that you had sent me a text, and I don't remember that. And I don't
something
think
about insider information.
Insider information, and yeah, you gave me some insider information. I said my insider information, among many points, is that Bigfoot is a lingerie model for Victoria's Secret.
I knew it.
He favors the lace.
He
favors the lace thongs. the whaleback. Is that what it's called?
The whaleback?
Is it the whaleback? Well, it's Bigfoot, man. It's gonna. Come on.
The whaleback.
It's the elephant back. It's the whaleback.
Awesome.
It's just.
We were talking about the cost of ammo being beneficial to a new shooter too.
Yeah, it is.
I've read before that 9mm right now is about 35% less than 45 ACP, and some people think of that as they're going to save 35% more money, but you almost need to think it's more like you're going to get 35% more training. You're going to be able to shoot more. You're going to be able to learn more.
Yeah, exactly. You can. And it's because of the components. I mean, you've got more lead, you got more brass, you got more powder. So it's the components. And I think that is a factor that can dissuade people from going with the 45, which, of course, is an excellent caliber. But the 45 has this mythology that it has a lot of recoil. And it doesn't. And the first time I shot a 45, other than doing some things with Hickok back in the 80s and 90s and whatnot, was before I bought a Glock 30, which I don't own right now, but I bought a Glock 30 about 10 years ago, and I took it to a range, local range, indoor range, before I was doing a lot of stuff in my backyard in the woods. And I shot the Glock 30. I said, "You got to be kidding me!" It was like shooting a 38.
Wow.
So then I bought that. And I carried that for a while, but sold it to build up on my inventory of Glock 9mm. And then I got the Colt, which is one of the most favorite guns I've ever shot. It's such a pleasant shooter. I'm accurate. I like the sights and so forth. But with nines, it is cost with ammo and the recoil, the magazine capacity. Because if someone is going to cross that threshold, because it's a psychological thing, it's a commitment to carry.
Right.
And you're saying, well, what's the bottom floor for carry? And I'm going to tell everybody, for me, it's 9mm.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can carry 22 if you want. And I've talked about that in some videos, that if you can't handle it, if you got some conditions, medical conditions where you can't handle a recoil of even a 380,
right,
then at least go with a 22 and just be accurate and be proficient with it. You can be proficient, like we've talked about, with 22s and get things done. But ammo availability, of course, right now, here in February 2013, you can't find anything. But the cost of ammo is a factor. Recoil, magazine capacity. And I was thinking there was something else I was missing here with the 9mm.
As far as some of the 9mm ammo out there, they have the label plus P or plus P plus. Is it really beneficial for anyone to get that ammo that's labeled that? I know it's a stronger power, right?
Yeah, you got more velocity, and realistically, it's not that much more percentage-wise. The thing about velocities in handguns, when you go down in velocity with a handgun, you might go down 5%. I tested something earlier this week. I think the velocity difference between a short barrel and long barrel, and it was a 45, but you drop down in velocity, you might lose 10%. But in energy, which is that momentum, that energy, which is being defined as the ability to do work, energy, in a soft target, it goes down even more.
Right.
You might drop velocity 10%, but you might drop your energy by 17 or 20%. So,
because it's all based on the kinetic energy that's following that bullet, the built-up energy behind it that's going to make that expansion cavity, right?
Right, expansion, and of course your penetration, it's a whole nother. I think a lot of people might go as far as saying that without having the option for plus P and 9mm or plus P plus, that the 9mm really cannot be effective. And that's what it comes down to, is being effective, because there's a lot of different ways you can take this. Personally, I feel like that in the 124, you look at the bullet weights, the predominant bullet weights for 9mm, 115 grain, standard pressure is going to penetrate well. You're just not going to get a lot of expansion. I think some people might go as far as saying, and I kind of feel this way, that without the plus P or the plus P plus options in 9mm, even though it gives a nominal advantage compared to standard pressure, that it might, it's probably what's really helped the 9mm. When you look at ammo development in the last 10 or 15 years, and even the last 5 or 6 years, when you look at all the major service calibers defined as 9mm, 45, 40, and 357 SIGs. I've got to be an advocate for 357 SIG. I'm sorry. But the 9mm, and I think a lot of people will agree with this, has benefited from this technology, whether it's more, the composition of the bullet, the polymer tips, or whatnot. But I think just the way that they now make bullets and the technology and the R&D has really, really kind of closed the gap between the 9, the 40, 45, and so forth. And again, that the caliber wars are never going to go away. But the plus P pluses and the 115s, 100. When you look at a 115 out of the brass, it's such a small piece of lead, and you're going, wow, that's just not enough. And even a 124, to me, you hold it in your hand, you're going, and even a plus P, you're launching that at approximately 1,200 feet per second. And you're thinking, what's that going to do? Well, it's not going to expand a ton, but it's the penetration aspect, and you're getting 400 thereabout foot-pounds of energy. And again, I'm a believer in the energy factor. So people choose 9mm. They say, 115 grain is light. It's probably easy to find. 124 grain, I think, is the most popular carry option. 147 grain and 9mm is where you really get into a debate. I think a lot of old school folks are saying the 147's never really expanded. You got a lower velocity. You're getting into 1,000 feet per second or less out of a 4-inch barrel, 9mm. So why would you want to go something that is subsonic in velocity? Because then you're getting down to 300 and something foot-pounds of energy when you're measuring that. But the thing about the 147s, and it's actually what I have right now in the Glock 19 I brought with me tonight, it has the 147 grain Federal HST plus P. I just like the 100. I like, and you'll hear people say heavy for caliber, whether it's 180 grain in 40, 230 and 45. There are some proponents, and I think I'm one of those, of the 147 grain in 9mm. Obviously, it's you don't have the ton of velocity behind it. The HSTs advertised 1,000 feet per second. I think I got close to that out of a 4-inch barrel. The plus Ps, which is what's in here right now, is 1,050 feet per second. So you're still subsonic. And actually, when I tested this versus the standard pressure penetrated a little bit more. Things moving faster, slow down faster. There's something to be said for the 147s, and 10 or 15 years ago, I don't think I could have said that, but technology has improved in the components and so forth, and how they design bullets now. They penetrate well, and they are designed to expand. I think that was a knock on the 147s and 9mm 15, 20 years ago, was that they're not going to expand. You're basically making a full metal jacket.
So what was your longest shot with a 9mm?
Longest shot with a 9mm, and it's actually the longest shot I've made with a handgun, is 250 yards, laser measured with a Glock 19. I think I have that on video.
Was it on steel?
Yeah.
Nice.
IPSC. So that's roughly 18 by 24 inches.
Mm-hmm.
It's a torso-sized target. And I was set up on some property close to where I live. I've got 3 or 4 places I can shoot, fortunately. If I didn't have that, I don't know what I would do. I can shoot in the backyard out to about 50 yards, maybe 80 if I go sideways, but I'd rather not do that. I mean, it's safe, number one. But I do have some property that I can access. It's about 700 acres of property.
Wow.
And I set up a target. I had a nice backstop, and I had hay bales behind that. And it was on a hillside, and I had a clear line of sight. And I believe I have video or a segment of video on that, but it was with the Glock 19. It was not the first shot. It probably took me 15, 16 shots to do it. But
How far was the holdover on it?
Oh, wow. Probably about 2 feet.
That's not
2
bad.
to 3 feet. Yeah, probably 2 to 3 feet, no more than that. With the hill on the backstop, I could see, and I was using 115 grain full metal jacket. So it's not the most accurate stuff in the world because it just kind of slides out there. But 9mm, I've seen stories of people accidentally being hit with 9mm from 300 or 400 yards away. It's like a 22. You launch it, it's going to go out. But yeah, 250 yards, and I've done 200 yards a lot with a Glock 34 or a Glock 19. The crazy thing about the short barrel Glocks, and Hickok has shown this as well, you can be very accurate at long range with the compact Glocks or the subcompact Glocks.
Yeah, I've seen him do it with the 26.
He's done it with the 26. I know he's done it with the 27 at 230 yards.
How long is that long gun that he has?
230.
230? Wow.
Yeah, I'm actually the guy who measured it. But yeah, 230. But yeah, everything I do like that, and I posted a Glock video in 2012. It's just a montage of shooting, and the end of it closes with me raising up just from a draw and raising up in front of the camera and hitting IPSC at 200 yards with the 19 and then dropping back down. You can hear it ding in the distance. So
that's awesome.
I like doing that kind of stuff. And I think it's really not difficult. A lot of people can do it. You just have to have the ability to get out and practice somewhere for that.
Right.
Yeah, it can be done. It's not impossible.
So we've got a little trivia question. And 10 Outdoors 9 is generous enough. He's going to autograph a Nashville Armory hat for us. And whoever can find the answer to this in one of his videos, I don't know how many you're going to have to. How many videos do you have up?
About 250, 260.
So good luck trying to find this. But how many Glock 9mm magazines do you own? And that is hidden within one of your videos?
It's in a couple of videos, and let's try to make it a little easier. Obviously, it's going to be, you can search the videos for Glock.
We got to make it hard. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I'll give them a variance of being within 25. How about that? If they're within 25?
Within 25, how many?
Of the quantity.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, that'll work. And then what we'll do is we will get a drawing of all the names that were within 25 of those Glock 9mm magazines, and we'll announce it next week, and the winner will get an autographed hat from the Nashville Armory, signed by 10 Outdoors 9. You were right. You really don't know crap about a 9mm, do you?
No, I don't. Not anything. I probably know more about that than any other caliber, but I'm learning about the others. I'd say beyond that is probably 357 SIG.
Gotcha. So for other trivia, last week we forgot to do our trivia question. So a throwback to last week's Valentine's episode with my wife and left hand's right hand Pepper. We were going to ask a trivia question about a movie with guns, had to do with relationships. So in the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are fighting in the living room, what gun does she pull out of the fireplace? So in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, what gun does Angelina Jolie pull out of the fireplace when they are fighting? That is this week's trivia. For those of you that won the past 3, the 2 lights and the Glock range bag, those got sent out, or actually got sent out today. So you should be getting those beginning of next week, maybe mid next week. I'm not sure how long it'll take to get there. Don't forget, too, the AR-15 beauty pageant. Deadline is March 1st to get those pictures in. Just send us a picture of your AR-15. Has to have some kind of piece of paper, something with your name in the picture, initials, because anybody can pull an AR-15 picture off the internet and say it's theirs. So have something with your name in the picture. Email it to us at talkinglead@gmail.com or post it on Facebook or send it to us on Twitter. Any of those will work. And the deadline's March 1st. And then probably about the end of March, we'll have the episode where it'll be the beauty pageant. And it's a functionality thing. Functionality, beauty, looks, how much people like it. We're going to have a Special Forces Green Beret come in. Bruce, who you just met, the SWAT team leader, he's going to be one of the judges. And that'll be fun. It's time for Facts to Fight the Myths. We'll start with you, 10 Outdoors 9. What's your fact to fight the myth?
It really revolves around the theme of the show today, and that is the myth that the 9mm is not an effective self-defense caliber. Okay, it's been effective in warfare using Full Metal Jacket for over 100 years. It has been proven to be effective on the street by law enforcement. Civilians have used it in self-defense, legal scenarios, and it has proven to be effective. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it is dependent upon bullet selection. I think you really need to evaluate what's out there, and of course that's with any caliber, and of course shot placement, skill, training, tactics, and you can never forget Murphy and that luck that's on your side. So, but I think more than the other service calibers, 9mm is very much load specific, and there's a lot of good choices out there. And I'm glad to help with your questions and so forth. I get a lot of that. And again, I realize that it could be the first choice for somebody in self-defense. And again, it's your choice. And you can't help folks with that. I can't help folks with that. I mean, you have to make that choice. But what we're trying to do with things like this is to get information out there, because it is hard to find. And the more information you have from people who are at least, trying to learn more and help you learn more, that's going to help all of us.
Kind of what you were saying about just the myth of 9 not being effective defensive round. I was listening to a podcast this week, and I can't for the life of me remember which one it was, but he had a good point how, yes, 45 ACP is a good defensive round, and 9mm is too. And when you talk about, a lot of people say, oh, well, one round of 45 ACP is going to be a lot more effective than one round of 9mm. That's probably true too, but the problem is, when it comes to a firefight situation, you're not going to have that time to stop, draw your weapon, aim perfectly, get everything right on target, and make sure you're going to hit your target. It's usually a chaotic, hectic situation. So in that situation, he was saying how you can get your 9mm after recoil back on target faster and get more rounds off. So it's more of an argument, okay, a 45 ACP is going to be the equivalent of 3 or 4 rounds of 9mm at a better speed. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, and you can kind of summarize that by saying it could be better. And again, it comes to shot placement. We all hear stories about people who are hit 8, 9 times with a 45, what is deemed to be very good quality ammo.
Sure.
And they have a lot of center mass hits. They don't fall. And it comes back to the discussion we had earlier today with regard to the will to fight and survive in the person who is the threat. And that gets into psychological and so forth and physiological, where people who are hit don't even know it. So, a 9mm with effective shot placement with even a really crappy bullet could stop a threat.
Sure.
And I'm not saying take somebody out of this world. I'm saying all you want to do is stop the threat. You just want to stop it, where there's no further action.
And I used to work at a hospital, and I've seen people walk into the ER with a gunshot wound, and it'd be a 45 ACP wound, and they're fine.
Yeah, I mean
they're not fine, but they're walking in,
right.
They're going, hey, I got shot.
Right.
And you're kind of like going, oh my God.
And the thing about ammo selection with Full Metal Jackets, your energy deposit is going to be downrange, because in most cases a Full Metal Jacket is more likely to pass through from any angle where it comes in and goes out than would be a jacketed hollow point. That's the purpose of the jacketed hollow point. And my theory on hollow points, we didn't really get into this, is that I favor the penetration aspect in reaching vital organs and shutting down as many body systems as possible with as many shots as possible until the threat stops. Expansion for me is a bonus. And a lot of people that I deal with and the feedback on videos in this business, if you want to call it that, this interest, this enthusiasm, is that folks are really hung up on the expansion. Well, that expanded more than this. I mean, you can have a 9mm that expands more than a 40, or a 40 that expands more than a 45. It depends on the bullet construction, bonded versus non-bonded, how many petals are in there, the velocity, where it hits, and you throw bone into the equation,
everything goes out.
Sometimes that can hurt you because there's a video we discussed when we had our caliber craziness episode, and it's a doctor and he's discussing different calibers and their effectiveness in the medical field. I don't know if you've seen it before. He's actually a German guy.
I've seen it.
And he shows an x-ray of this bullet that it was an expanding hollow point, and as soon as it hit the sternum, it expanded and basically stopped just past the sternum.
Yeah.
A centimeter away from the guy's heart. Guy survived. He was fine.
Yes, I work in that field to some extent, and I have access to resources and research that most people don't because of what I do for a living. And that's probably one thing that kind of augments what I do and my interest in all of this. But I'm doing this from a layperson's perspective, and I think people, if they don't understand anatomy, you've got a sternum that runs down through here, and that's a very thick, solid piece of bone, and then you've got ribs that are all very close together, and there's not a lot of space. And everything I do with these tests is a representation, and anyone else, regardless of what media they're doing, and for example, the pros, the real pros, because I'm not. But you look at the FBI and the ammo companies who really know what they're doing, and they have all these different protocol with ammo testing. They have the resources, they have the money to buy all these ballistic gel blocks and so forth. And you're just showing, 16 to 20 inches of soft tissue, of fat. That's basically all it is. And you got a pretty heavy piece of bone less than 1 inch beneath your chest. You can hit that and it can stop, like you said. Or you can hit a rib and make what is a good solid center mass hit, and it deflects and goes out their side, and the fight is still on. Yep. So it's a crapshoot, no pun intended, but that's what it is. So all this testing and so forth is valuable, I think, and that's why I do it. And I'm always going to be interested in it, I believe. But it's a static, immobile target that doesn't have a heart and a soul and the will to fight. It's just a static block. It's not shooting back either. There's no adrenaline or anything else.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's just a the day that happens, I'm getting out of this.
But that would probably be the highest rated YouTube video ever.
Yeah, if I'm around to show it. But yeah, exactly.
Well, my fact to fight the myth this week, I'm gonna talk about the letter campaign that we mentioned earlier. We launched the letter campaign. Basically, we got inspiration from a few of these small boutique arms companies, Spikes Tactical, LaRue, York Tactical, a few of the other small ones. And they were coming out with a stamp saying, okay, if these gun bans go through and civilians can no longer buy the AR-style rifles or military-style rifles or whatever you decide to ban that we create, then fine. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We will not sell to the government or any government agencies, military, law enforcement. So we decided to come out with a letter campaign for the civilians to address the manufacturers. Basically what this is the same stance, but us as civilians who spend our money, our hard-earned money, with Glock, with Smith & Wesson, with Colt, with Remington, with all the big manufacturers, are telling them, hey, look, if these gun bans happen and you continue to honor your government contracts sending these same weapons that the civilians are no longer allowed to own, then we're not going to spend another dime with you. We love you. We want you to take this stance with us. It's not an anti-capitalism campaign. It's not an anti-big business. It's a pro-Second Amendment. Look, you're a gun manufacturer. Take a stance with your customers. The myth is, if little old me sends a letter, it's not going to make a difference. The fact is, no, they will make a difference. Every single person makes a difference. If you take that stance, and we have millions of people taking this stance and sending these letters to the manufacturers, it's going to open their eyes. It's going to make a huge difference. Would you agree?
I would agree, because I think I responded to that video in a comment. I do agree, and it's a creative way of utilizing our strengths in this industry, because that's what we need to be doing more of. It's a tactic, and it's probably not a tactic that the people who are pushing against us were expecting. And it carries a lot of weight. A lot of things, with regard to this, come down to big business. In Tennessee right now, we're dealing with this parking lot bill, the so-called guns and trunks, which is most poorly named bill, but anyway, that's what the media calls it, guns and trunks. I can think of a lot of things there, but I'm not. But they talk about, big business in this state, Volkswagen, FedEx, and others are opposed to that because they don't, and so the legislatures here in Tennessee listen to it. Well, we've got the same opportunity here to use the strengths that we have. One thing that you and I know, and a lot of your listeners, is that the firearms industry and everything related to that, your ammo companies, your accessory companies, look at all the companies that support this industry. And they may be a small company, but they may bring in $2 million a year in revenue. Mm-hmm. And they're supporting people with jobs, which is a heck of a lot more than anything the government's creating right now. So the firearms industry is doing it the American way, and they're creating jobs, and they're American companies, and they're supporting Americans and feeding families and putting bread on the table and covering insurance and all these other things. And it is one of the fastest growing, most stable industries. You look at the last 8 to 10 years since that AWB expired in 2004. Look at all the new companies that have been introduced to this market.
Sure.
Since 2004, 9 years ago.
They're one of the
9 years ago.
They're one of the only industries that is actually hiring people in mass right now.
They're growing. And the other thing is, this industry right now cannot keep up with production. How many industries in the U.S. right now have grown at that rate, say since 2004, since the door was opened up again? How many new businesses have come in? How many people have been hired? How much has gone out on payroll? And the fact right now that they are behind in production with everything that they make because we as consumers are buying it. We're lining up. We're lining up at gun shows. We're lining up at the stores. We're lining up online. And it's, we look at the negative side, the supply side. We can't get these things right now. The positive side, let's look at the volume of business that's being created in this industry. We need to use big business from that perspective against the people who are trying to push back with us with false stats that don't make any sense in the legislation they have that they're throwing out at us. I'm going to that all day long.
Yeah. And this letter campaign, it tries to get big business to partner with us in this. I think that's going to be the only way, because we keep getting letters from these legislators stating, yeah, we love guns, we're pro-Second Amendment, but we think the government's on the right track with
they say that because, coming back to the Tennessee example, with the parking lot bill, because I know last year, 2011, 2012, when they first tried to get this through, I'm sure this has happened in other states, it was a fact here in Tennessee that the companies I mentioned, FedEx, now I'm not saying they're bad companies, obviously they're not. They support a lot of people in this region, but they've got the wrong message. Why is FedEx concerned that people like you and I, who go through the background checks and practice safety and are courteous in informing law enforcement officers that we're carrying, why are they worried about us? I mean, FedEx in Memphis, I think they got bigger problems in Memphis trying to go eat downtown on Beale Street or something else, which, by the way, is a no-guns area. It's a gun-free zone. Beale Street
is?
Yeah, Beale Street is a gun-free zone. Oh. I hope I'm not wrong on that, but I believe they've declared that a gun-free zone. So,
wow.
Yeah, I think FedEx has bigger issues in their own backyard to be concerned about than they are about law-abiding citizens like you and I who are doing things right. But their position with regard to this parking lot bill is we're big business and we're going to do things, and we're going to maybe build a plant here versus there. And they use the threat of big business. And, of course, Tennessee's always been, believe it or not, a big business state with Nissan and FedEx and these other companies and healthcare here in the Nashville area. And the legislators will listen. Our elected officials will listen to that. I think it's a good tactical move to say, look, we've got our own big business. And again, you're right. We're not attacking the big business of the companies we're supporting. We're making it very clear, look, we're obviously for you. We're lining up and waiting on these back orders for you to get us product. We're sending you money. We want your product.
And
let's work together to do this from a perspective that the folks who are trying to push this through are not looking for.
And you take this stand with us, and you've got loyal customers for life. Can you imagine if Glock lost their civilian backing? I guarantee you it's a lot more than their
I think it is, because that's a whole other discussion, I feel. But, Glock dominates. You'll hear different figures. It could be 60, 65, 70% of the law enforcement market in the U.S., and that's where they've made their money. But, I mean, heck, just in the since 1991 when I bought a Glock 22, my first Glocks, that's 22 years ago, I have owned approximately 35, almost 40 different Glocks myself over that period of time. And of course, I trade them, resell them, and so forth, but I have bought, and that's probably more than a lot of people, but maybe fewer than others who are true Glock collectors.
But just on this table tonight, we had probably, $3,000 worth of Glocks at one point in time?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money just with 4 guys.
Yeah, and that's based on the price that we paid for those whenever we bought them relative to what today's going market price is for it.
Sure. So that's my fact to fight the myth. The myth being, oh, poor little old me is not going to make a difference by sending my letter. The fact being, yes, you will make a difference by sending your letter. You will, and continue to send to the legislators too. Don't give up on that to start this one. Take the same concerted effort that you're putting towards the legislators and put it towards this campaign also. So, Bruce, what's your fact to fight the myth?
All cops do not eat donuts.
That's the fact, right?
That is the fact. We all do. Most officers do. Now, you'll see us drink a lot of coffee, okay? But no, most officers are not donut eaters.
So instead, y'all eat scones?
Yeah, I'm more in the crawlers myself.
Crawlers.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
crawlers.
Cupcakes.
Yeah.
Crawlers are just they shouldn't have never been invented.
Bear claw.
That's the most disgusting form of
You don't like
pastry.
crawlers?
No, I don't.
love crawlers.
What is
Well,
that? I've never heard
It's
of
a
that.
texture thing.
It's like an eggy kind of donut.
Yeah, it's a texture thing.
I had to crawl
It
up
looks
in the
like a
fetal
tire on a
position.
truck or something. It's-
So what was that again?
When Hostess went out of business, I laid down and cried like a baby. So, yeah.
I've got a,
No, I don't eat donuts.
I got
so.
a couple of King Dongs and Hostesses also.
That was another
I
government
went out. I went to
conspiracy.
Kroger's that day and bought what they had, and it's in a closet at home.
You need to hold on to those. They'll be worth something someday.
It's next to all my 9mm.
Especially when Woody Harrelson comes back for the zombie takeover.
Well, I know this guy has the wrong ammo, so I'm not calling on him.
Bill Murray.
So we've got some listener feedback. First one, you want to take that one?
Sure. So this is from Danny. Danny says, I think the letters to the firearms manufacturers are a really good idea. The PDF is great. If you could make a list of all the firearms manufacturers' addresses so people wouldn't have to look them up, that would be helpful.
And that was an idea we got from him. And I did go on our Facebook post where we announced this campaign. I went and I listed, I think it was 10 or 15 different firearms manufacturers. I'm also going to take that list and I'm going to put it on our website too at some point this weekend. So that was a really good idea, Danny. Thank you very much. We've got some new iTunes reviews too. First one is from Mr. Inator or Inator or Tomator. I don't know which
I wonder
one.
if he's related to Mr. Roboto.
That might be that. We're old. I don't know how many people.
I just gave away my age. Kind of like one of your listeners dressing up to do some 22 trick shooting, looking like Geddy Lee from Rush. Payback. There it
That's
is.
going in. That's not getting edited out. So our first one is from Mr. Inator. Alchemist turning lead into gold. 5 stars. I kind of like that. That was the best review title we've had since we started this. Alchemist turning lead into gold. This has to be one of my favorite new podcasts I've found on iTunes. Each week the shows are getting better and better. I like that each week they have a facts to fight the myth segment and a little bit of trivia for the listeners to enjoy. Once again, we apologize. We forgot the trivia last week. This is a must listen for anyone who enjoys firearms. Thanks, guys. Next one, another iTunes fantastic podcast. 5 stars from I Heart Pistachios.
You mean to read that one?
Go for it.
Is that what that says?
I Heart. It's
Is that
one
a
of those
heart?
little text hearts. It's a arrow sign and a 3.
So they
Less
love
than-
pistachios.
They love pistachios.
All right. And their comment, just finished all your episodes. Nice work. You guys are very entertaining and your stuff got better with every show, and I assume it will continue. I don't, nor do I care to have a Twitter or Facebook account, and I don't have Facebook. But hopefully my review and loyal listening will be good enough. I look forward to the next show. They bring up a good point. They're not so much into social media. So that kind of, I think to me that underscores what you're doing here is reaching out to some people who, however they found you, maybe even through a YouTube channel. They don't mention anything about that. But I think that's a really good point because I have a Twitter account with a few followers. I don't have Facebook. I did for 3 or 4 days, and I just don't have time to keep up with it the way it should be managed. But I think this illustrates there are some folks out there that are not so much into social media that are looking for information such as what you're presenting.
There really are.
So this is good that you're reaching these kinds of folks.
And one thing I kind of, I've harped on it a few times on the shows, but Twitter, the thing I love about it is it's almost like you're creating your own little news ticker.
Well,
with the things you like.
That's a great way to describe it because some viewers encouraged me a few months ago, beginning of the year, said, you got to get into social media. I said, look, if I had time, what free time I have right now outside of my real job, it's on YouTube. It's creating videos, creating ideas for it, producing them, and then trying to respond to as much feedback as I can. I can get to a fraction. My inbox right now, my email that's tied to my YouTube account has 87,000 emails in it.
Oh, my God.
I'll even post a picture of it on my Twitter page. It has 87,000. I can't get to it.
Wow.
So one other thing is that you look at these folks who are responding like that, which I think, again, is very positive in where you're going with your program here and your format, is something I've mentioned, is that a lot of folks, a lot of gun enthusiasts, and my concern is, especially with all the activities that are going right now here in February 2013, a lot of gun owners are not on the internet. They're most certainly not on YouTube and what gun channels are out there. And how are they getting information about all these things that are going to impact them? My concern is that far too many gun owners are going to find out way too late after the fact. Just like, and that was obvious. I mean, I had relatives and friends calling me who don't watch YouTube. They're all over Facebook and they text people all the time. But people calling me into the year around the election and everything else saying, where can I find an AR-15? Where can I get ammo? And I'm saying, dude, you're 4 years behind the curve. I mean, I've got ammo cans where I've inventoried ammo and I counted it 4 and 5 years ago. I started stocking up 4 and 5 years ago, if not before that. So this is great because it'd be interesting to see after, a few months or a year or whatnot, are you getting to a different demographic of gun enthusiasts who's not in social media, who's not following YouTube? And I think that's exactly what we're looking for right now.
It is. And one of the things we're going to try to do to start marketing is we're going to start buying tables at some of the local gun shows and setting up a table and, having flyers and everything there and kind of marketing to a lot of the gun show people who probably don't even use the internet at all.
Well, that's the thing.
Much less Facebook,
well, yeah,
Twitter.
Exactly.
So they're not into the, face page and Tweeter.
Face page? What is face page?
It's MySpace and Facebook put together, I think is what somebody did. And then, of course, Left Hand was calling Twitter Tweeter for the longest time and literally thought it was spelled TWTR.
Really?
Yeah. But he's not here to defend himself. He had to leave a little early. So
I feel honored to sit in this chair.
Next one, love the podcast, 5 stars by J Black P2P. I wonder if that's Jack Black. That'd be awesome if he was pro gun. Strong podcast.
I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, me too. Strong podcast. I'm so glad to have this. Keep up the great work. You have helped me realize there's a lot I thought I knew about guns that I don't really know. Thanks, I think.
They're not certain. You still need to convince this person.
They're not
on board just yet.
So make sure you go to iTunes and write some reviews. That really is what helped us get seen by a lot more people. As you write the reviews on iTunes, it helps our rankings go up. And we actually got up to rank number 3 this week at one point in the outdoor iTunes. We were ahead of Tom Gresham.
Oh,
we were proud.
We
were like 3 slots ahead of Tom Gresham.
That is awesome. Sacred. That's sacred ground right there.
It is. So go on iTunes, do that. Don't forget to go to Ruger.com. That has the links to automatically send those letters to your senators. Check out our new letter campaign that's on our website, www.talkingled.com. And, of course, follow us at Twitter at TalkingLed. And we're also on Facebook, just Facebook.com/TalkingLed. Thank you, Bruce, for coming by. Thank you, 10 Outdoors 9.
Appreciate you guys taking the time.
It's been a good time. And Left Hand, as always, keep your loved ones close.
And keep your firearms closer.